Revit allows us to place casework, sometimes called cabinets, into our Revit model. We'll be placing casework along the right-hand wall inside of this room. Then we go to the Architecture tab, then select on Component, because casework is considered a component family. Click on Load Family from our default Revit content. Go to Casework, then find Base Cabinets, and then click on Base Cabinet - Double Door and to Drawer. We also want to load in the sink unit. We'll hold down the Control key on the keyboard and then click on the sink unit family. Then once both of those have been highlighted, we'll click on Open to load both of those into the project. Once you've done that, you'll find underneath Properties on your type selector list that you have one of those base cabinets that you just loaded in. Now, if it's the sink unit, you may need to click here and then look for the Base Cabinet Double Door and to Drawer on the list. Now we need to select on 36-inch. This will allow us to insert in a 36-inch wide cabinet. Move your cursor over here to the drawing area and then hit the space bar on the keyboard till it's rotated around. The dashed line is showing up in this direction. Then move this piece of cabinetry up into the corner. Click to place it. Place another one directly beside it. Once they're touching each other like that, click. Now I don't know where the next cabinet actually needs to be. I'm just coming down next to this column and then clicking. Click to place another one in. And now the next thing I'd like to do is put that sink unit in between these two cabinets that we just placed. On your type selector list, find that sink unit. And let's try using the 36-inch and see if it fits in. Hit the space bar to rotate it around. Then we'll move this into place, and I'll move it up so it's touching the upper cabinet that I placed. Then hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard to get out of the placement of the cabinetry. What I like to do now is move these two lower ones up so that they're touching this edge. Select on one of them, hold down the Control key to select on the other one, then come up to Move, put the intersection of this line and this line, then move these up to this location. Click for the final placement. Now the next thing I'd like to do is load in our upper cabinetry. Go to the Architecture tab, select on Component, go to Load Family, find our casework. Now we'll go to Wall Cabinets. Select on the upper cabinet double door wall. This just happens to match those cabinet types that we loaded in down below. We'll now see that that's the kind of cabinet that we've loaded into the project. Instead of a 42-inch, though, I want to change this and make sure that it loads in as being a 36-inch. Underneath Properties, there's an elevation setting. And right now it's set at 4 foot 6 inches. If we wanted this cabinet to be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, that would be the elevation that we would change in order to adjust its overall height. But for these cabinets, let's leave them at 4 foot 6, and I place one of these above each one of the units that we just placed in. Click in that location and continue that same process all the way on down. In my case, I can see that I'm actually just a little bit off. I'll probably need to move these after the fact. If you miss the point where you need to click, it's not a big deal. You can always move them. And now if you have gaps like this, all you need to do is select on either one of your cabinets or multiple cabinets by just holding down the Control key, coming up here to Move, clicking at the intersection, and then moving them up to the next intersection. And you can continue that process any place that you need to move your cabinets. And in this case, I'd like to move them all up so they're a little bit closer to the edge of the wall up here. So I'm just going to select on all of them by just holding down the Control key and selecting. Use my Move command. Move them from here up to the edge of the wall. And now I have all my cabinets here inside of my space. Now the last thing I'd like to do is take a look at them in an elevation view. And to accomplish that, I'll zoom out, select on the section symbol. What we need to do is click on the little double arrows and hold our mouse button down, and then drag this section mark out here. What this allows us to do is see anything between this line and the dashed line. Since our cabinets are between the dashed line and this line, we should be able to see them inside of the room. So with the section highlighted, right-click and then select on Go to View. We'll then be able to see all these cabinets that we just put into place. After placing our casework in, the next thing that we could do is place some countertop. To place countertop, we need to go to the Architecture tab and then select on Component. Then click on Load Family to add countertop to our project. Double-click on the Casework folder, then double-click on Countertops. Inside of this folder, we want to load in the countertop with sinkhole. Now, actually, there's a wide variety of different countertops that we could choose from. Then click on Open. We can now see that we have a countertop with sinkhole, 24-inch depth, and that's actually the one we want to have. Hit the space bar in order to rotate around the casework. The next thing that we need to do is actually put this countertop over here in the upper right-hand corner of the room, right over the top of where our casework is located at. Once it's in this location, click to place it in. One of the things that we'll see is that we have some double arrows here where we have the hole for the sink, as well as some double arrows down here at the bottom of the countertop. What I'd like to do now is start to stretch out this countertop so that it covers the entire area where our casework is located at. So let's hit escape a couple times on the keyboard to get out of the placement of our countertop. Then select on the countertop, click on this double arrow, and then drag it out to the bottom half of where our casework is located at. Click on these double arrows and then pull this hole down here to the middle. When you do that, it will try to stretch this endpoint out as well. So we will need to come back and make an adjustment to that. Click on the double arrows, pull it down. Once you get that hole in place for the sink, click on these double arrows, pull those back up, let go in order to stop adjusting. Then we can take a look down here, click on the double arrows, pull those up again. And by doing that, we'll then have placed our countertop in the correct location. Depending on which countertop family you load into your project, sometimes they have different elevations associated with them. So that we know that we have this countertop at the right height, I always like to go to a section view to take a look at that countertop placement. Select on this line that makes up the section, right-click, and then click on and go to View. We can now see our countertop. We can see that it's going to the proper location. We can see that the backsplash, which is part of that countertop, is not inside of the wall. It's actually where it's supposed to be at. And we can see that the countertop is sitting correctly on top of our casework. If it needed to be adjusted, all we would have needed to do was select on the countertop itself, move it up or down accordingly to get it to the right elevation. Here we need to place a sink where we have the hole inside of our countertop. Then go up to the Architecture tab and select on Component. Then we need to load a sink into our project. Select on Load Family, then scroll down until we find Plumbing. Double-click on the Plumbing folder. We can either place an architectural sink or we can place an MEP sink. And an MEP sink looks like a sink as well, but it also has a connector on the end, which allows us to draw piping off of it. What I'd like to do for this project is just go to the architectural sinks, go to Fixtures, then go to Sinks. And the kind of sink that I'd like to load in will be the Sink Kitchen Single. Then click on Open. This loads that kind of sink into the project and we can find it on the type selector list. Now to place it into the project, we just move over here and then hit the space bar to rotate the sink around, click to place it in, select on the sink, and then use the arrow keys on the keyboard to just push it back until it's basically lined up with the hole here inside of the countertop. Unfortunately, though, this hole in the countertop isn't lined up perfectly with our sink. Click on the countertop, then click where we have these arrows, and then pull this hole so that it's lined up perfectly with those lines that make up the outside edges of our sink. Once we have that in place, we'll zoom out. Make sure that everything still looks okay here with our countertop, because it's possible it could get pulled off the edge like we can see right here. If it is, make sure to pull that down so that it's in the correct location. Do the same thing up above. If you have this really dark line, which makes it difficult to see where the countertop is going, another thing that you could do is go up to the View tab and then select on Thin Lines, so we get all the lines being nice and thin. In this case, I can see that my countertop is actually going into my wall. So I'll select on the countertop and then pull that line down. Now it looks like the countertop's in the right spot, and it looks like the sink is in the correct location. Take a look at our sink in a section view. We can right-click and then go to View. Now if the sink had been a little bit too low or just a little bit too high, we could have clicked on the sink, and then we could adjust offset value so that it would have been a few inches higher or a few inches lower, so that it would be at the right elevation relationship to the countertop. But as is, it's in the correct location with the sinkhole properly formed around it. To design a restroom area, go up to the Architecture tab and then select on Component, because everything that will be placed in will be component families. Then on the Type Selector list underneath Properties, what we need to do now is find a toilet stall that we can place into our project. Select on the 60 by 95-inch clear toilet stall accessible side 3D with toilet. You'll see a circle with a line going through it where your cursor should be. The toilet stall accessible needs to be hosted to a wall. If I touch a wall, we'll then see that Revit family get placed. Move this toilet stall up to this location and then click to place it in. The next toilet stall that we place does not need to be accessible. So we can go to the Type Selector list, go to the Toilet Stall 3D with toilet, and then select the 32 by 56-inch clear. Once again, you'll see the little circle with a line going through it, which means we need to come over to a wall. When we touch on a wall, we'll then see that Revit family. And then if we move the toilet stall up, we should then click once they touch each other. So click in that location in order to place the next toilet stall in. Since this is a men's restroom, the next thing I'd like to do is place a urinal inside of the space. To do that, we'll go to the Type Selector list. When we find the urinal screen -3D with urinal, select on the 30-inch on center. I don't exactly know where I need to place this at. I do know that this needs to be 30 inches, basically off the edge of this wall. Click here in order to place it in. Then I'll hit the escape key a couple times on the keyboard in order to get out of the command. Select back on that urinal. We'll see a line that was hidden before when we were trying to place this in. It actually is a hidden line inside of the family. This line needs to be moved up so it's at the face of this wall. Come up to the Move command, select on the line, come up to the face of the toilet partition, and then click to place our urinal in. So with the urinal selected, we come up here to Copy, click in this location, come straight down, click in this location. Now we have two of them side by side. Now we need to place in our cabinetry. We'll come up to the Architecture tab, then select on Component. We'll click here on the Type Selector list. And now we're looking for some base cabinets. Here we have the base cabinet double door sink unit. Let's try the 36-inch. Hit the space bar a few times until you have this rectangular shape and it's rotated around in the direction that you see it. Place the first base cabinet in this location. Now let's try to place another one right beside it. Click in order to place it in. And now we can see that we have our cabinetry going all the way on across. We now need to put in our countertop. So on the Architecture tab, we come up here to Component, click on the Type Selector list. Once we have our 24-inch depth countertop with sinkhole, hit the space bar a few times to rotate it around. And let's start by placing it in this location. I don't exactly know where the hole needs to go just yet, but I'm going to drag that over to this spot. Click on the double arrows down below here and then pull it up to here. We may need to adjust that again later. I'll click on these double arrows, pull them in. Now the next thing I'd like to do is place a sink right in the location where this hole was located at. Select on Component. Now I want to go through the process of looking for a sink. Scroll down until we can find the sink vanity square and then select on the 20-inch by 18-inch. Hit the space bar a few times to rotate it around until it's facing that direction. You'll start to see some blue lines. This is where it actually needs to be located at. So we'll click in order to place the sink in. I'll hit escape a few times on the keyboard to get out. Select where we have the countertop and then adjust the hole to match the inner circle of the sink. We want to make sure that the outside edges of this countertop are in the right spots. Then I'll click over here. And now what I'd like to do is copy the countertop and the sink down over the top of the other piece of casework. Select there on the countertop, hold down the Control key, and then select on the sink. If you accidentally select on the wrong thing, it's not a big deal. You can just hit Shift, click on the object that you accidentally selected, and it'll deselect it. And in this case, I'm going to make sure that I selected on both the countertop and the sink. Come up to Copy, click on the intersection of these two lines, come straight down, and then click on the intersection of those two lines down below. If for some reason your section is cutting through in this location, which will make it a little bit hard to see the front face of these sinks, you can just click on the section view, hold your mouse button down, and then drag this section back a little ways. Right click and then go to view. We'll make sure that everything is in place. Notice that our sinks are actually just a little bit too low. Select on one of the sinks, come over here to where we have move, pick a base point and then start to move it up so we can see the sink a little bit better. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll just click on the sink, select on move, click a base point somewhere out there, and then move the sink up. Come up here to the align tool. Select on align, pick this line, then I'll pick the underneath side of the sink. Notice how it drops itself down. Now we need to do the same thing with the sink on the other side, which is pick the face here of the countertop, pick the underneath side of the sink in order to drop it down so that it's at the right elevation. We can then see that we have our restroom modeled in place.